Hey YouTube, this is Ian with Big Rock Adventure, and today something a little bit different. I'm going to do a review of one of my bicycles. So this is the Cannondale Slate. The Slate came out, I think it maybe was 2016, 2017, before the whole gravel bike craze really set in. So what Cannondale did was they took an alloy frame that's pretty much designed like a road bike frame. They stuck a suspension fork on it, something called the Lefty Oliver, which has 30 millimeters of travel. You can see here a small amount of travel, and their patented Lefty design, which is expensive but also works pretty well. They put wider tires on it. It came with 40 tires from the factory. But the weird thing was, and one of the things that's really the downside to the Slate, at least for the first few model years, was that the gearing was a road bike gearing. And the cockpit wasn't very good for off-road, so the gearing wasn't good for off-road, and it was kind of confusing. People didn't really know what to make of this thing, and they still don't. So the way that I think of this bike, it's really kind of a road bike with wider tires and a little bit of front suspension travel. Now, the front fork does have a lockout right here. You can see you push to climb and that locks it out. There's still a tiny bit of movement, but it's not too bad. You can adjust the rebound here with this knob, which is fine. So I bought the Slate because I thought, oh, it'd be cool to get into like sort of adventure bicycling or gravel riding or dirt roads, fire roads. But what I came to find out with this particular bike is that actually it's really not very good at that. And there's a few reasons why. So the reason that it actually doesn't work that great for me where I live, I mean, I live in the mountains. Everything is steep and everything is rough and rutted out. So the road bike gearing was a total showstopper for riding off-road. I mean, it comes with a 36, 34, it comes with a 5236 chainring, which is like road gearing. It is Cannondale's really nice hologram SI, which is great. Now, I did change out the rear cassette to an 1134. I think it came with an 1128 or an 1130 or something like that, which is a joke. I also changed out the derailleur. I went to an RX, which is the gravel derailleur with a clutch. It came with an Ultegra setup, which is only for road use. Now, keep in mind, back in 2016 or whenever they brought this out, that gravel bikes were not really that big of a thing yet. This was kind of one of the bikes that helped turn people's attention towards gravel riding. So Cannondale led the way, but ultimately the bike was maybe ahead of its time, but also didn't quite have the features that you really need in a gravel bike or an adventure bike. So for me, I found the bike to be just way too much of a road bike to go off-road. The tires, it doesn't have enough tire clearance to put like a really wide tire on. You can see I've got like, this is a 40, I think, tire, and it doesn't have much more clearance. You can do a 42, but that's really not enough for me. I really want to have like a, almost like a small mountain bike tire, like a 1.8 or a 2.0 for the kind of gravel adventure riding that I want to do. You do have good tire clearance in the front because of the Lefty, but then you're limited by the rim. You'd have to change the rims out. The suspension, it does offer some compliance and absorption in the front. 30 millimeters, this is definitely noticeable. It definitely takes the edge off and allows you to ride through the chop and things like that. But you feel still kind of frail with the wheel not being that strong and the tire not being that wide, not being able to absorb very well. So that's kind of an issue. I also had to change the stem to a shorter stem and had this really long stem from the factory. This is a size large and I'm 5'11" and it's kind of too big. So I went to an 80 millimeter stem down from the 100 that it came with. So that was a big help. The handlebars are really not very wide. They really could be wider. So that's kind of an issue as well. I did put on the Specialized CGR seat post. It has this elastomer here, which absorbs a lot of vibration, gives you quite a bit of flex in the back. But really, I'd much rather trade this off and have a much wider rear tire that I could run lower pressures on and get my absorption through there. So it's not particularly lightweight either. This bike is around 21 pounds. As you see it, maybe 22 pounds with bottle cages and the pedals, things like that. A few other things that I'm not too crazy, that I wasn't crazy about with it. These Mavi wheels are kind of heavy and they're not very wide. They're also a real pain to set up tubeless. I think the later slates came with a different wheel. So the slates evolved towards the end of their run, and I think maybe last year or this year is the last year of the slate, which is probably a good thing. But they've put on, you know, a little bit better tires. They've changed the gearing, which is to more appropriate gearing for a gravel bike, so that's good. But the Topstone has replaced the Slate for them as their gravel bike offering, and I just saw they're releasing some sort of a full suspension Topstone, which is kind of cool, and I'm glad they're doing that. This seat is, I'm not a huge fan of the seat. It's okay. It's a fabric scoop radius seat. It's kind of an interesting shape, and it's pretty soft. It's not bad, I guess, but wasn't really my favorite seat that I've ever had. I was thinking of changing that out. I'm actually selling this bike. Someone's coming to pick it up today because I'm going to buy an electric mountain bike. I'm getting a Specialized Turbo Levo, so I need to sort of pinch my pennies and get some cash going towards that deal. So now, in terms of gearing, like I said, this is a 5236 in the front and 1134 in the back. That's still not enough for the steep climbs that I like to ride. Certainly better than the stock gearing was. I do like to have a 2x setup on my gravel bike, because the thing is that gravel bike is for long distances and going fast. I don't like a 1x setup on a gravel bike. I like 1x on my mountain bikes, but not gravel, because I want that big ring to really get down the road or go downhill or fly across the flats pretty well. So I like the 2x setup, but you need to have you know, smaller chain rings in the front, and you need to have a little bit bigger cassette there in the back. The gravel derailleur with the clutch was a huge help, because then this doesn't slap around quite so much. The other thing that, you know, it's kind of an obvious thing with this bike, but the other thing that's kind of obvious with this bike, but I should talk about, this bike has 650B wheels. Now, I don't really personally like that very much, and here's why. The tire sizes are much more limited. You don't have as many choices with the 650 because it's kind of an odd size. Also, I feel like the larger wheels roll over things a little bit better, so I prefer the standard, you know, road 700C road wheels, or 29-inch, which is basically equivalent. Of course, it does have hydraulic disc brakes, which are great. I mean, I don't have any bikes now without hydraulic disc. Even my road bike has hydraulic disc, and I hate rim brakes. I just hate them. Some other downsides to it that you might think of: it's kind of hard to put luggage on this bike, because without a traditional fork, your options for sort of bolting stuff onto your forks, bottle cages or what have you, bags, is kind of more limited. Doesn't really have great provisions for that, but I guess you could make it work, but I don't see a lot of people doing bike packing with this. So I guess for me, if I'm going to get another gravel type bike, honestly, I probably won't get a gravel bike. I think it's kind of a weird fad for me. Drop bars and kind of tires that are a little bit wider than a road tire, but not really wide enough for sand. I mean, these tires dig into sand. It's just totally unrideable in any sort of soft soil. I think what I'll do is build up some sort of a hardtail mountain bike, maybe with a rigid fork even, and put like a fast rolling 2.0 tire on it, and you know, flat bar, but maybe put aero bars on it. Something like you see like the Tour Divide racers, something like that. You know, you see them riding those kind of bikes. I think that makes sense, because a bike like this just doesn't go off-road very well at all. It just doesn't. It's kind of just a slow road bike. I know I sound like I'm throwing a lot of shade at this thing, and I kind of am, but the truth is I have enjoyed it. I have had some good rides with it, and it's been a good bike. I've had it for a couple years, but it's time to move on. I understand why gravel riding is getting popular. I think it's a great thing that people are getting out and doing more riding and having these adventures. And I think gravel bikes have evolved. I think this was a trendsetter. This was before its time. Cannondale always likes to be innovative and brave and push out crazy new things, and I applaud them for doing that. But the world has moved on from the Slate. It was an awesome bike with a lefty Oliver fork and sort of the radical design, but we've moved on. We have better choices for gravel bikes. We have better choices for road bikes. We have better technology. Also, for the price of this thing cost, the Ultegra model was like $3,300 brand new, and you still get a alloy frame. I mean, that's not really gonna fly anymore these days. You should be getting carbon for that kind of money. So anyway, I hope this review was helpful. If you're considering buying a Slate, they're a good deal on the used market. This one is selling for pretty cheap, and the guy's really happy to come get it. So a good deal for a used one. Just be aware of the limitations that I mentioned, and ride safe out there, and we'll see you next time.